Good morning Year 4, and this is your maths video for if you've got this booklet on Friday the 5th of February. Now I'm going to start by saying a very big well done to Archie and Tucker. A fantastic understanding of fractions, boys. Please keep it up and let's see who I can mention in my next video. Now we're going to start today's learning by playing a quick odd or even game. Okay, so when we started our home learning, one of our activities was about odd and even numbers. Who can remember what makes a number even? Okay, so a number is even if it's in our 2 times table. Okay, so I've got some numbers here that I'm going to pull out of my pot, and you're going to tell me if it's an odd number or an even number. So the first number is 6. Is 6 in our 2s? It is, brilliant. So that must mean it's an even number. Next one then, let's see. This one then, 15. Is that number in our 2 times tables? No, so that makes it an odd number. Let's keep going there. Next one, 23. What do we think about this number, Year 4? Odd or even? Odd, brilliant. Then we've got this number, the number 8. Is it in our 2s? It is, so it must be even. Is that one in our 2s, Year 4? It certainly is, well done. We'll do 2 more, I think. Okay, this number, 22. That one's in our 2s, which makes it even. And finally then, let's give it a good shake. Finally, the number 25. What do we think about the number 25? Okay, so that one's an odd number because it's not in our 2 times tables. Okay, now today we are moving on to something completely brand new. And I know we'll do fantastic at this because you did so well at your fraction work. Okay, so your learning question today, Year 4, says, can I begin to understand? And we've put begin there because we're only just starting with this brand new learning. Can I begin to understand a range of units of measure? So our key word today is measure. Okay. So if I wanted to measure some liquid to find out how much I had, I would measure it using a jug, and we've all seen these, I bet you've even got one at home. And we would measure it using millilitres. Okay, say that word after me, milliliter. Milliliter. Now don't worry if you can't spell milliliter because it's a really long word. But we might see milliliter written like this, with a and a l for milliliter. Okay? And remember, millilitres are what we measure a liquid in. Now another unit of measure, if we wanted to find out the weight of something, so how heavy something is by using grams. Okay, so say that one after me, grams. Grams. Brilliant, well done. Now that one's a little bit easier to read, but we often see it written like this. So today, if we see an M and an L, that tells us that we're measuring a liquid using millilitres. And if we see a G, that tells us that we're measuring the weight of something using grams. Okay, let's have a look at our next two then, year 4. So we can also measure the length of something, and the length is how long or how tall something is. And we use a ruler for this, just like the rulers we use at school. And when we're using a ruler, we measure using centimetres. Okay, so say that one after me. Centimetres. Centimetres. Brilliant, centimetres. And we'll often see centimetres written using a K and a M. Okay, so if we see a curly K and a M, a C and an M, that means we're measuring the length of something in centimetres. Okay, and the final one that we need to know for today's learning, year 4, is if we're measuring how hot or how cold something is, so the temperature. And let's have a practice at saying that word, so temperature, temperature. Super. And when we measure temperature, we measure it using, now are you ready, because this one's got 2 words, degrees Celsius. Okay, and this one, again, is a little bit different when we represent it, that you'll see today. So you'll see a little circle up in the air, and then a big curly K, and that represents degrees Celsius. Okay, so if we now turn to your booklet, year 4, you're going to turn to page 20, which is the first page on measuring. Okay, and it's asking you to fill in the gaps with the right units, and we've just spoken about some of these units. So here I can see an M and an L, which stands for millilitres. Well done. So millilitres. I can see a G for grams, and then I can see that little circle and a big curly K, and that stands for degrees Celsius. So here I've got a big bag of ice, and it says ice has a temperature of about 0 what? Does it have a temperature of 0 millilitres? Do we use millilitres to measure the temperature? No, so we don't use millilitres. Which one of these 3 measures temperature? And pop that just here next to the 0. Okay, so then if we go here to the teacup, a teacup holds about 200 watt. Now in a teacup you'd normally put some tea, and that's something that we drink, isn't it? I know Mr. Griffin is partial to a nice cup of tea. So tea is a liquid, it's something that we drink. So what do we use to measure liquid, year 4? Don't forget to write that answer here next to the 200. And then finally, a bag of sweets weighs about 100. And if we're finding out the weight of something, how heavy something is, what unit of measure do we use? Remember, you can only use these 3. Okay? You might want to pause the video whilst you complete question 1. And let's have a little look at question 2 then. So, this time we've got to think about what unit of measure we would use, and also what we will use to measure these things. So if I wanted to find out how big my hand is, so how long it is, what could I use to measure that? Would I use a jug? Here, would that help me to find out how long my hand is? Would I use some scales? Would that help me to find out how long it is? Or would I use a ruler? Okay, so we'd use a ruler. Well done, Year 4. So I'd use a ruler. And I would measure it using centimetres. Okay, well done. The next one then. Now we're not going to be measuring the bottle, we're going to be measuring what's inside that bottle. So if I wanted to find out how much juice was in my bottle, what would I use? Would I use some scales to find out how heavy it is? Or would I use a jug to find out how much water there was? Okay, so I would use a jug, and what unit of measure would I use? It would be millilitres. Well done, Year 4, if you got that one right at home. So I would use a jug, J or G, and I would do it in millilitres. And the last one then, Year 4, so here I've got a big bowl of food. If I wanted to know how heavy that bowl of food was, what would I use? Would I use a thermometer to tell me how heavy it was? That says that we use it for temperature, so that wouldn't help me. Or would I use some scales and measure it in grams? Okay, so I'd do it using this, wouldn't I? So I'd use some scales, sk, a, l, s, and I would measure it in grams. Okay, so this will help you when answering question number 2. So let's go back to your booklet. Question number 2. Match each measuring tool to the unit. And the first one's been done for you. So we've got a thermometer, and we use thermometers to find the temperature in degrees Celsius. Okay, so here I've got a jug. What would we measure using a jug, Year 4? What would we measure using a ruler? And what would we measure using some scales? So you've got to draw a line from the picture to the unit of measure. Okay then, so your last question, Year 4, is asking you to measure some lines. And I found a game that we can play, and I'll send this link out to you so you can have a go at home as well. So, this is going to help us to measure in centimetres. We're finding out how long something is. So I've got a glue stick. And how long is my glue stick? Where does it end? At the answer, 12 centimetres. So let's find 12.
Brilliant.
There we go, next one. This time we've got a yellow pen. So let's have a think, where does it end? Okay, I've dragged this down to help us. We're stopping here because that's where my pen ends. And we've started at 0. Okay, so that would be 13 centimetres. Oh, this time it's a little one. We've got a rubber. So let's find where my rubber ends. Check, it starts at 0. It does. So how long is the rubber, Year 4? That's it. So that's 3 centimetres. A green pen this time. Okay, so it starts at 0. It ends at 11, so the pen is 11 centimetres. Pair of scissors this time. Where do my scissors end? Fantastic, 13.
Excellent.
A sharpener. Okay, brilliant. If you said 3
Brilliant.
centimetres. Got a bigger rubber this time. Think very carefully, where does that rubber end on my ruler? 5 centimetres,
Excellent.
super. Pair of scissors again. What are we up to that time? Fantastic, 11.
Excellent.
We'll do 2 more. So what's my sharpener? How long is my sharpener? What's its length? 3.
Brilliant.
And finally then, year 4, so a nice sharp pencil. That ends there. How long is my pencil? 14 centimetres.
Well done.
Okay, so let's go to your page. And we're looking now at this bottom question. Question number 3. Use the scale to work out the lengths of arrow A and arrow B. So I've started at 0 and I'm going all the way up to where arrow A ends. Okay, but then arrow B is really tricky because it doesn't start at 0. It starts at the number 6 and it goes from 6 all the way up to 15. And you can use your ruler a little bit like a number line, year 4, so let me show you what I mean. Okay. Now I'm not going to do it for arrow A because we should be able to figure out how long that one is, but let's have a little go at arrow B together. So arrow B starts here, okay, so that's where it ends, and I'm going to count up in centimetres. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So you can see that to get from the end of my line all the way to the start, that I did this many jumps, and I want you to use that to help you, year 4. Okay. My final challenge for you today then, year 4. I've had a go at measuring a line here, so you can see that I've got a ruler, and when we use rulers, remember we use centimetres, and I've said that my purple line is 5 centimetres long. Is it true or is it false? Don't forget to take a picture of your challenge when you take a picture and send it to the year 4 email address. And to finish today's lesson, let's roll our dice so we can reflect on our learning, because remember this is brand new learning for you. So it's okay if we're a little bit here rather than here. Is there anything that you would do differently? So what would you do a little bit differently if you could do it again? Can't wait to see your efforts today, year 4.